confess that my breakdown between your mother and I has caused emotional unbalance in the family.
Most of the time, I don't like my family. Everyone in my family. Take a breath. Everybody. I feel like I'm angry at everybody in my family. I don't like my family. If they weren't my family.
The cracks in the Braxton legacy were never invisible. They were always there, whispered about in salons, whispered about in recording studios, whispered about behind stage curtains when the lights went down. But now, those whispers have turned into screams. The very men who once vowed themselves to the Braxton sisters are dragging the family secrets into the spotlight. And when you add the voice of Ashley Braxton, the niece who was silenced, shamed, and exiled, you start to see that the Braxton family name was built not on love, but on lies. The music, the glamour, the sisterhood, it was all a mask.
Tamar, you just, you had me thinking I was crazy too. I see, you know what, it felt like a surviving Tamar moment. They always talk about how, women is being mentally abused and physically abused. Men get mentally and physically abused too. Cause she done socked me in my jaw before. You feel me? And I'm sure Jeremy got before and they got their head cracked. Okay? And them gas station pills, yeah. You gotta do something to stay afloat.
And now, that mask is crumbling. It began with a confession. Ashley Braxton, carrying the heavy burden of being Evelyn Braxton's granddaughter, took to TikTok with the courage that years of silence had tried to bury. She spoke plainly, with no filter, about the nightmare that changed her at just 16 years old. Ashley Braxton said her life was shattered by an inappropriate relationship involving one of her aunt's husbands. Instead of finding arms to shield her, instead of finding the safety of her powerful family, Ashley Braxton was painted as the problem. She wasn't protected, she was punished. The shame became too much to bear, so much so that Ashley Braxton ran. She didn't just run from the Braxton sisters. She didn't just run from Atlanta, she ran from the country. She started life over in silence, alone, because staying meant drowning. She was a child reaching for help, and all the Braxtons gave her was silence. And silence is deadly. Years later, Ashley Braxton opened her mouth again, this time to millions. She told her story online, and for the first time, strangers believed her. For the first time, people said, "We hear you. We see you." But what did she get from her own blood? Silence. Not a word from the women who built their careers on speaking to the world. Not a word from Evelyn Braxton, the matriarch who once called herself a prayer warrior. Instead, Ashley Braxton was threatened. Her own father, Mikey, sent her a cease and desist letter. Imagine the betrayal of your father threatening to sue you for telling the truth about your own pain. Imagine the heartbreak of being punished not for what was done to you, but for daring to reveal it. And yet, in the silence, one hand did reach out: Tamar Braxton. For all her chaos, for all her drama, for all the headlines that have painted her as difficult, Tamar Braxton was the one who extended compassion. Tamar Braxton liked Ashley Braxton's post. Tamar Braxton admitted that she too had endured trauma that nearly broke her. Tamar Braxton, the sister who had once been ridiculed for being too loud, too dramatic, too much, turned out to be the only one with enough empathy to acknowledge her niece's pain. But the silence of the others screamed louder than Tamar Braxton's support. Towanda Braxton, silent. Trina Braxton, silent. Toni Braxton, the face of the family, silent. No call, no text, no word. Isn't it tragic, and isn't it telling that the family who sold themselves as the blueprint for loyalty and sisterhood couldn't even extend basic humanity to a wounded child in their own bloodline? The pattern was too familiar, because when Tamar Braxton herself confessed years earlier that she had been touched multiple times as a child, what did her sisters do? Did they gather around her? Did they shield her? No, they dismissed her. They brushed off her confession with polished cruelty, saying it was her truth but not the truth. And those words, they weren't empathy. They were daggers. Because what they really meant was, "We don't believe you." That moment told the whole story of the Braxton sisters. They cared more about being warned before the world found out than about the fact that their own sister had been carrying trauma for years. It was image before empathy, silence before solidarity. And it all circled back to Evelyn Braxton. Evelyn Braxton has always been the heartbeat of the family, but a heartbeat that pulsed with bitterness. When Tamar Braxton tried to name the person who hurt her, Evelyn Braxton shut it down. She caged the truth. She called it protection. She called it family loyalty. But what is protection when it shields the predator? What is loyalty when it betrays the victim? Evelyn Braxton made a choice. And that choice has haunted every Braxton sister since. Then came the ex-husbands. The men who once shared their beds, their homes, their last names. The men who saw the Braxton family up close without the makeup, without the microphones, without the lighting. And those men have started talking. Carrie Lewis, once married to Toni Braxton, revealed what the world never knew. He said that Toni Braxton's rise to fame wasn't built on her voice alone. According to Carrie Lewis, Toni Braxton leaned on her sisters far more than she ever admitted. He claimed that Tamar Braxton's riffs were used without proper credit, that Towanda Braxton and Trina Braxton carried harmonies and background vocals that kept the music alive while their own dreams were buried. To the public, Toni Braxton stood like a queen on her throne. But behind the curtain, it was Tamar Braxton's voice and her sister's sacrifices that built her stage. And then there was Andre Carter, ex-husband of Towanda Braxton. His words rattled fans to the core. He described life with Towanda Braxton as quicksand, always sinking, always stuck. He spoke of financial chaos, fraud charges, arguments that cut to the bone. He confessed that he once told her, "I feel like I married my mother. And I didn't even like my mother." That single sentence revealed everything about generational pain. Because Towanda Braxton wasn't just Towanda Braxton, she was a reflection of Evelyn Braxton. And the cycle continued. According to Andre Carter, resentment within the Braxton sisters exploded once Tamar Braxton's star shot higher than anyone expected. When Tamar Braxton married Vince Herbert and got the family their reality show, it should have been a blessing. But when Tamar Braxton became the breakout star, her sisters saw red. Towanda Braxton and Trina Braxton blamed Tamar Braxton for their stalled careers, their missed chances, their failed group. It wasn't just jealousy, it was survival. They believed that as Tamar Braxton rose, they sank. The reality cameras captured the cracks, the bickering, the side eyes, the dismissive comments. They weren't just sisters, they were competitors, fighting for validation under the same roof. And when money entered the picture, those cracks widened. Towanda Braxton faced fraud charges and forgery accusations. Trina Braxton struggled with unpaid rent and public humiliation. Even Traci Braxton, the sister who often stayed quiet, couldn't escape financial battles. Through it all, Toni Braxton and Tamar Braxton swooped in like divas, sometimes offering help, but always with a sting. According to the men who lived in that world, when the less successful sisters asked for help, they weren't treated like family. They were treated like burdens. They were reminded again and again who held the money, who held the fame, who held the crown. This was never a family united by love. This was a kingdom ruled by hierarchy. Toni Braxton at the top with her Grammys, Tamar Braxton close behind with her reality shows, and the rest clawing for scraps of spotlight. And Evelyn Braxton? Instead of soothing the wounds, she sided with power. Because money talks even in bloodlines, every confession circles back to Evelyn Braxton. Every wound leads back to the matriarch. The ex-husbands, the children, the court documents all point in the same direction. Evelyn Braxton silenced her daughters. Evelyn Braxton chose image over honesty. Evelyn Braxton taught bitterness instead of healing. And now, the cracks are too wide to ignore. The story of the Braxtons isn't just about love songs and harmonies. It's about silence. It's about secrets. It's about survival inside a house where loyalty was demanded but never reciprocated. And now, thanks to Ashley Braxton's courage and the ex-husband's honesty, the truth is spilling out louder than any song they ever recorded. The story of the Braxtons was never just about music. It was about survival inside a family where silence became law, bitterness became tradition, and betrayal became second nature. By the time the ex-husbands spoke and Ashley Braxton's voice broke through the silence, the cracks in the legacy were no longer cracks, they were open wounds. Let's start with Toni Braxton. The world saw her as elegance, grace, and power. She had Grammys, she had hits, she had fame. But behind the spotlight, Toni Braxton carried chaos. Her marriage fell apart. And when she turned to Birdman, fans thought it was an odd but bold choice. The whispers said otherwise. Rumors of Birdman's double life, whispers of fluid sexuality, and a lifestyle that clashed with Toni Braxton's values tore their bond apart. Toni Braxton, who once swore she would never repeat her mother's mistakes, found herself walking the exact path of Evelyn Braxton, loving men who could never truly be loyal. And every heartbreak hardened her, not softened her. Then came Tamar Braxton. Loud, fiery, unapologetic. 3 marriages, 3 divorces, each one messier than the last. From Vince Herbert to David Adefeso, the world watched as Tamar Braxton's life unraveled on camera. Police reports, fights, tears, public meltdowns. And through it all, her sisters? Mostly silence. Tamar Braxton, the only one who had shown compassion to Ashley Braxton, was left to crash and burn while her family watched from the sidelines. She was mocked for being dramatic, but the truth was, Tamar Braxton carried trauma that was never allowed to heal. And trauma doesn't just disappear, it poisons every relationship it touches. Towanda Braxton fared no better. Her marriage to Andre Carter was a slow-motion car wreck. Public fights, financial struggles, and fraud allegations followed her like shadows. Andre Carter admitted he felt trapped, smothered. Married to a woman who reflected everything he disliked about Evelyn Braxton. And Towanda Braxton, hustling to keep up appearances, was dragged into court more than once. The family brand was polished for TV, but in the real world, landlords were suing and creditors were knocking. Trina Braxton's marriage to Gabe Solis was pure humiliation. On camera, he mocked her, belittled her, and turned their union into a circus. Their toxic carousel of betrayal and reconciliation always ended the same way: disaster. Even after Gabe, even when she remarried Vaughn Scales, the whispers never stopped. People said Vaughn cared more about the perks of being with a Braxton than about Trina Braxton herself. And then there was Traci Braxton, the quiet one, the overlooked one, the sister who was often treated as an outsider in her own family. Traci Braxton carried betrayal silently when her husband, Kevin Sorrett, allegedly fathered a child outside their marriage. She forgave, but she never forgot. And when her health declined, when she knew her time was short, Traci Braxton made a decision that thundered louder than any song the Braxton sisters ever recorded. She cut Kevin Sorrett out of her will. Everything went to her son, Kevin Jr., nothing to the man who had broken her. In death, Traci Braxton finally spoke the words she had kept quiet in life: "I see you. And you get nothing." Fans called it her final act of independence. Some called it petty. Others called it poetic justice. But nobody could deny it was intentional. Traci Braxton had spent her life loyal to her sisters, loyal to her husband, loyal to the family brand. And in the end, she turned loyalty into rebellion. She left on her own terms, the only Braxton to ever do so. All of this, the divorces, the lawsuits, the scandals, ties back to the foundation laid by Evelyn Braxton and Michael Braxton Sr. Evelyn Braxton, who raised her daughters with fire in her voice but bitterness in her heart. Michael Braxton Sr., who walked out on his family for another woman, leaving scars that never healed. Together, they planted seeds of distrust, silence, and resentment. And the daughters carried those lessons into every relationship they ever had. The ex-husbands saw it. They lived it. Carrie Lewis saw how Toni Braxton leaned on her sisters for success. Andre Carter saw how Towanda Braxton repeated her mother's mistakes. Gabe Solis mocked Trina Braxton until she was numb. Kevin Sorrett betrayed Traci Braxton and lost everything in the end. Vince Herbert and David Adefeso watched Tamar Braxton explode under the weight of trauma she was never allowed to process. And through it all, the sisters didn't know how to save each other because they were too busy competing, too busy protecting their own wounds, too busy blaming instead of healing. The Braxton Family Values show packaged all of this as entertainment. Fans laughed, cried, and tuned in week after week. But what they were really watching wasn't just bickering. It was generational trauma unfolding in real time. Every time one sister rose, another sank. Every time one cried out, the others went silent. Every time one reached for love, it ended in betrayal. And Evelyn Braxton, instead of breaking the cycle, fed it, choosing favorites, silencing truths, letting bitterness run the household. So when fans ask now, was the fame worth it? Were the songs worth it? Toni Braxton may have Grammys. Tamar Braxton may have spin-offs. But the cost was devastating. Families are supposed to be a refuge. For the Braxtons, family was the battlefield. And now, with ex-husbands speaking, with Ashley Braxton's voice refusing to be silenced, the illusion of sisterhood is shattered forever. The legacy of the Braxtons is not just music. It's not just fame. It's silence. It's rivalry. It's betrayal dressed as loyalty. They proved you can sing about love while never truly knowing it. They proved you can sell unity while secretly despising each other. And they proved that generational trauma doesn't vanish with fame, it only grows louder. The Braxton sisters had the voices to move mountains, but they never learned how to move past the pain in their own bloodline. Their songs reached millions. Their silence destroyed their own. And now, the truth is out. The empire wasn't built on harmony, it was built on lies. And once the lies cracked open, the world saw the Braxton legacy for what it truly was: survival through betrayal.
Please subscribe to Star Gossip and never miss the hottest celebrity updates. Hit that subscribe button on Star Gossip for daily drama, scandals, and celebrity news.